Welcome to the video for the Personal Best Training Week of October 5th. Our first races for the fall series are in the books, the 5 mile and 10 mile. We had some outstanding performances. Some we might even say were breakthrough. It's also, of course, interesting when we look at the age and gender graded results to see how people stack up. So the results will be in the newsletter and you can take a look at all of those. Also, we had a World Marathon Major, a very rare thing this year in London. If you haven't seen that race yet, I'm not going to spoil it and say anything specific, but there's some interesting storylines that came out of that race. So let's get into this week's workouts. On Tuesday, we have a workout that many of you have done more than once. It's 1 to 5 to 1. And especially coming off of a day of racing for many of you where we were really concerned about time and trying to hit goals and establish goals and figure out where we are, I want something where we can get some good hard work in, but we're not so focused on hitting times. It's not terribly measurable, but it's something that afterwards you can take a look at and see where your average paces were. You know that I like to look at your first minute up and your last minute down, how close were they, and all of the mirrored times, the 2s, the 3s, the 4s, and kind of calculate those paces, but also the overall pace for the workout. You also know that I'm a big fan of workouts that accomplish a number of things all in one package. And 1 to 5 to 1 certainly does that. When we're running fast and hard for 1 and 2 minutes, there's certainly a speed component to that. When we're running hard for 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes at a time, there's also an economy benefit to that. We are working on pushing that VO2 up, raising that ceiling. That can be a limiting factor for a number of other things below it. We're also getting some stamina, ability to maintain a pace, because there's 25 minutes of hard running. And because there's 25 minutes of hard running, plus the recovery jogs, plus the warm up and the cool down, it's not a bad day's mileage either, working towards that endurance benefit. So we're going to accomplish quite a bit. Now, if you're coming off of the 10-mile race, or maybe you did the virtual Fort Bend half marathon, I know some of you did the London virtual marathon. If you're coming off of something very significant this weekend, we can either dial that back to 5 to 1 or just do the day's mileage and run that nice and easy and relaxed and complete your recovery from a long weekend of racing. On Thursday, we have another somewhat ambiguous workout in terms of measurement. We have continuous hills. This is one that, because it's not real measurable, it's hard to maybe get real excited about doing it, but the training effect is incredible. If you want to do strength training that is specific to running, find a hill, because you know running up that hill, you feel it in all the right places. You're feeling it in all the places that will make your stride longer and more lively. So on a Thursday especially, we don't want to be really attacking these hills. Just run up at a reasonable effort. If you get towards the top of the hill and you're breathing a little bit harder and your legs are telling you flat or downhill would be a nice change, then you're doing it right. The recovery is running downhill, which gets us the eccentric contractions, which are a big part of what makes your quads sore in longer races or running fast. So you're getting training effect even on the recovery. So we're doing these in sets of 10 minutes, 2 to 3 10-minute sets. We count all the time running uphill, all the time running downhill. You might find a couple of different hills and do the first set on one and move to a nearby hill for the second set. If you're using the same hill, go out for a little bit of recovery, maybe half mile or mile, and then come back and do the second or third 10 minutes. So we have that on Thursday. On Saturday, we're back to a longer run for most of you. If you're planning to run the Monumental Marathon or our race series marathon on November 7th, at this point, we should be at least 18 to 20 miles. And if you're doing the half marathon, most people I have scheduled for at least 14 to 16. Yes, that's longer than race distance. And the reason we do that is that gives you a great safety net. If you're only interested in covering 13.1 miles, we don't need to go longer than that training. We actually don't need to go 13.1 in training. We want to go 13.1 or 14 or 16, or for some of you even 20 miles, because it gives you a greater safety net when you're trying to run a time. And if you're running harder and you start slowing down and maybe you're out a little too hard, those extra long runs give you that safety net so you can still finish without a complete crash and walk of shame to finish out the race. So that's our training week. Make sure that you're feeling good. If you have aches or pains, let me know. Let's address those now. It's easier to dial back just a little bit earlier than try to run through those things, especially now when we have just a few weeks left. We have 5 weeks until the marathon, half marathon on November 7th. So we really don't want to take undue risk at this point. So until next week, thanks and talk to you soon.